Even though we have 14 games on tonight's slate for MLB DFS, it is still kind of a tough slate for stacking, where there are a lot of pitchers who are facing teams with big implied team totals, but you can see paths to failure there. And there's paths to failure for every offensive stack because there's no such thing as a surefire stack. But I think there are more tonight. There are more paths to failure. And that allows me to maybe deviate from what the bookmakers are saying we should do for tonight, be a bit different, and hopefully try to identify teams that do have upside without the burden of massive roster rates. So we'll dig in, we'll try to identify some good stacks, and hopefully put ourselves on a good path to ending out the week on a profitable note. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberfire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberfire.com, here to break down Friday's 14-game main slate with lock set for 7:05 p.m. Eastern for today. And despite there being 14 games for tonight, no weather to note. A couple games are a bit warmer, if you want to note that for sure, which is relevant for offenses. Specifically, Atlanta is pretty hot. High temperatures in Kansas City for the Royals and the A's as well, if you want to stack two not so fun offenses. High temperatures for the Twins and the Orioles, or the Twins and the Rockies in Minneapolis as well. And finally, high temperatures in St. Louis for the Cardinals and the Cubs. But again, we've got these good temperatures, but not a lot of good spots for stacking. So it just kind of feeds into the overall theme for tonight, where stacking is tough and you might want to be a bit different with how you play things. We'll break down the pitching preview and get to those stacks in just 1 second. But first, a quick reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Of course, Fridays, always a big day here on the DFS feed. We have the UFC podcast via Austin Swain, getting you set for that. I've got NASCAR for Nashville coming up later on. Should be a pretty fun race there. So if you want to get UFC, NASCAR, PGA, and MLB podcasts posted right when they go up, make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Hit subscribe if you like what you hear. Leave us a rating and review as well. Hey, sports fans, there is no better time than today to sign up for FanDuel Fantasy. New users who have yet to make a deposit for FanDuel Fantasy can deposit today to receive 2 free entries. All you have to do is deposit a minimum of $10 into your FanDuel DFS account, and you will be instantly rewarded with 2 free vouchers. This is a limited time offer, so be sure to deposit now and play for free. Head to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel Fantasy app today. Eligibility restrictions apply. Go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app for more details. Pitching preview for this Friday main slate. Justin Verlander is the highest salaried pitcher on FanDuel, checking in at $10,500, followed by Alek Manoah at $10,400. We got Aaron Nola at $10,300. Luis Severino facing Verlander in a fun matchup at $10,000. Nick Pivetta is $98,000. Julio Urias is $95,000. Michael Lorenzen checks in at $93,000 with Michael Kopech at $91,000. Ian Anderson, $9,000 facing Urias. And then Merrill Kelly, Cole Irvin, Cal Quantrill, Jeffrey Springs, Chris Flexen, and Mackenzie Gore are the others at $8,000 or higher. Now, you could definitely justify going to that Yankees-Astros game and putting either Verlander or Severino at the top. I think because they're both great pitchers, they can overcome really tough matchups. I'm going to play things maybe a bit safer, potentially, and go towards an easier matchup, and that's with Aaron Nola against the Padres. So, not an easy matchup. It's just less treacherous, but it's enough to make Nola my top pitcher of the night. The Padres have a 104 WRC plus against righties in their current active roster. They have a 145 ISO and a 22% strikeout rate. They're about average, pretty much across the board, and that's doable for an opposing pitcher. And Nola is red hot right now. He has gone 8+ innings in 3 of his past 5 starts. He has let up either 1 or 0 earned runs in all 3 of those starts as well. And one of those was against the Braves on the road. Really tough spot there. Now for the full season, adding on the early season stuff with this stuff, Nola has a 2.79 skill interactive ERA. His ERA is now in the low 3s, so the results swinging that way as well. And that 2.79 skill interactive ERA is the second best mark for each pitcher in their most relevant sample, behind just Severino. The 29% strikeout rate for Nola, also second behind Severino. He isn't walking a lot of guys. His batted ball data is phenomenal. That's why I feel okay using him even in, what is kind of a tight spot. It's better than Astros or Yankees, but it's still not great. I used to be wary of Nola when he was on the road. He had big splits, home versus road. I think it was 7 percentage points one year gap in strikeout rate. But Here are the past 4 road starts for Nola. 7 innings, 2 runs against the Dodgers. 8 innings, 0 runs, or 1 run against the Braves. 8 innings, 0 runs against the Brewers. 8 innings, no runs against the Nationals. He had 8+ strikeouts in 3 of those as well. So not just the results, the strikeouts are there too. I've got Nola projected for 7.3 strikeouts for tonight, which ranks second behind just Severino, and I'll be behind him here for sure. So Aaron Nola, to me, deserves to be the top option on this slate, despite it not being necessarily a perfect spot for him for today. I do think Severino belongs second on our list. It's a combination of factors that put me on him here. The main thing is that he's good. I mean, like, it's just, let's keep it simple here. It's just that Luis Severino is very good. He's been upping the slider usage that he's been using recently. Specifically, he's been doing that for his past 6 starts, and it's a very good pitch. That slider has a 44% whiff rate, according to Baseball Savant, and the xwOBA against it is just 192. So it's no surprise Severino has gone nuts in this time. He has a 34% strikeout rate, a 2.70 skill interactive ERA. The batted ball data does leave something to be desired, but you got to hit it first, and they're not doing that very often. Severino's hit double-digit strikeouts twice in this time, and both were in good matchups, but he also had 9 strikeouts against the Blue Jays on the road. He let up 5 earned runs there with 2 home runs and 4 walks, so he's not bulletproof, and that's why I prefer Nola. But it's hard to cross off anybody who has a good shot to get to double-digit strikeouts, and Severino has that upside. The Astros WRC Plus is 115 against righties. They have just a 19% strikeout rate. If you're trying to use a pitcher against the Astros, you'd better make sure they are a legit stud. But I think Severino is that. So I'll rank him below Nola here and respect the Astros in that sense. But I think he's a rock solid second for me. I just really think that upside is hard to capture in a lot of spots. So I will go with Nola 1, Severino 2. Now, if you want to contend with the high scores you'll get from Nola, Severino, maybe even Verlander, other guys, you need strikeout juice. And not a lot of value plays have that typically. And Jeffrey Springs hasn't shown a lot of it yet, but I do think he has it somewhere in him. And I will have some shares of Springs for tonight, and he will be the top value on this slate. Part of this is the matchup for Springs. He's facing the Pirates, who have a 91 WRC plus against lefties with a 24% strikeout rate. They don't walk a whole lot. And when you combine that high strikeout rate with the low walk rate, it says to me that there's not a lot of good plate discipline there, which should help Springs be more efficient with his pitches. And that could help him go deeper in the game. Springs hasn't been able to do that just yet a ton. In the 8 starts he has made, he has just 2 quality starts, but he's had some tough tests in there. He faced the Yankees, the Blue Jays, and the Cardinals, and they're all teams that can crush lefties. It's also important to remember that Springs was getting stretched out for a part of this stretch. He didn't go 90 pitches until June 7th. And in the 3 starts since then, he has gone 92, 94, and 86. So the fact that he hasn't had a blow-up game yet makes a lot of sense. But now he's at home. He's in a plus matchup. Someone with his peripherals could do damage in this spot. He has a 26% strikeout rate in his 8 starts as a starter. He has a 3.44 skill interactive ERA. I think this is a guy who can get you 7, 8, 9 strikeouts. And if he does do that, or if he's capable of that, I think that he would show it in a spot like this. So I'll take some swings at him here. I just don't think that he's shown his full upside yet. So I think that if you look at the game log for Springs, it might sound a bit short. So to me, he's better than what the numbers say. And Springs is a guy I do want to use on this slate. Let's go now to stacks. As I mentioned, they're very tough. And there are a lot of ways you can play things here. I don't feel super firm in any of them. The one thing I do feel pretty good about, though, is ranking the White Sox one. I'm not sure if Luis Robert will play tonight. He sat out yesterday with some leg soreness. I'd prefer if he plays, but even if he does not, I think the White Sox are a good stack here. They're facing Austin Voth, who's making his 2nd start of the year. Did pretty well in the first one. He got a lot of whiffs, 4 strikeouts and 2 2/3 innings. I'd expect him to go around 60 or so pitches here and then give way to the bullpen. I don't think we need to fear either Voth or the pen right now. Voth has an 8.39 ERA all in all this year. His expected ERA is 5.70, and these numbers are very much in line with what he's had in previous seasons. Voth hasn't let up a ton of hard contact yet, but that could come as he gets further stretched out. the velocity goes down, the pitch mix changes, not as efficient with that stuff. So it gets a lot tougher. So I'm fine with the White Sox here, both against Voth and whoever follows. And I think that to me, if you're looking for like a firm slate tonight, I would say the White Sox are that, but the Robert question is kind of the one thing that keeps me a bit hesitant because he is a pretty impactful bat in that line. If he can't play, it definitely would hurt things. We're seeing Jose Abreu have his typical summer surge right now. I assume this is mostly due to weather because a lot of colder games in Chicago to start the year. He starts slow and then the weather heats up and we see Abreu go nuts. And whatever it is, whatever the reasoning may be, it's happening again. Because since the start of June, Abreu has a 200 ISO. He has more walks and strikeouts. His barrel rate is 13.4%. The season-long numbers against righties will not impress you, but I'll be super into him here. I think that those numbers undersell him due to the weather in which he's played, the way he's hitting the ball right now. I think that Abreu is back, and we should buy into what he's been doing here, as he typically does. For the number 2 stack, that's where things get a little bit different. I think for me, I'm going to go with the Angels. They're facing Chris Flexen for the second straight start, and Flexen's results have settled down a bit, but they're still not great. And now you're making him face a very good offense to the second straight start. I think we can stack against that. The full season ERA for Flexen is back down to 4.23, which isn't bad, but his expected ERA is 5.28, and that's due to a lot of fly balls and a lot of hard contact. And the Angels did contribute to those bad numbers last time out. Of the 17 balls they put in play, 10 were hard hits, so a 95 plus mile per hour exit velocity. 8 of those balls were fly balls, and now you're seeing him again. They were putting him in tight spots the first time, and now having seen him again, I feel like they might be able to convert on that hard contact. A lot of factors align to make the Angels viable for tonight. I'm willing to buy into it, and I think the Angels are number 2 for me behind just the White Sox. Against Flexen, you can feel pretty good about either the righties or the lefties. I might have a slight skew towards the righties here. They have a 480 slugging percentage against Flexen so far this year with a 189 ISO. The batted ball data for both sides is pretty even, so that allows me to put more weight on the results, and they say to favor the righties. So I will still go with the lefties, love the lefties, but I'll give Mike Trout a bump up, Taylor Ward, Max Stassi, all those guys, powerful righties who hit righties well, and should benefit with Flexen being a guy with some slight platoon reverse splits. If you want a team that doesn't have a super high implied total, may go a bit overlooked as a result, and could potentially be that team to take advantage of a somewhat murky slate, I'd check out the Blue Jays. They're facing Adrian Hauser in Milwaukee, and Hauser is in a bit of a rut, and I think it allows us to stack against him. In the past, Hauser's been a big ground ball guy. That hasn't been as true this year. He has a 46% ground ball rate, which was at 59% last year, and I think that Hauser's trying to tap back into what he was doing previously. He's been throwing more sinkers and fewer four-seamers across his past 5 starts, which tells me he prefers how he was living previously, but it's actually pushing things the wrong way because in those 5 starts, he's let up a 36% fly ball rate with a 44% hard hit rate. He's had minimal strikeouts in that stretch, includes the start against the Reds. Not a great offense, but they popped him for 3 earned runs. Overall in this time, Hauser's ERA is 6.31. Let up 3 home runs with 5 earned runs to the Phillies. That was in Milwaukee, which he is where he's at tonight. He's facing the Jays. Pretty dangerous team, even against a righty. And bookmakers not as high on the Jays. Their implied total is 4.63, which ranks 9th on this slate. That probably means they're not going to be all that popular. And again, if I'm not sold on all the teams with super high implied totals, I feel okay being a bit different, deviating, and trying to find some upside elsewhere. And I think that we can get that via this situation here and checking out the Jays. So the Jays to me a pretty fun stack. And one, if you're playing like single entry, I think they're going to be a high quality option for me there. And probably the best format for them and one of my favorite stacks for single entry for tonight. With Hauser, we can use both righties and lefties against him, which is reassuring because the Jays don't really have any lefties. But lefties do a slightly higher fly ball rate against him, but righties, a lot of line drives. The ground ball rate is pretty similar on both sides. And that's key because, again, we don't want ground balls. So we want to keep that number level, and it should be level here. So even with the Jays being basically just righties, I do still think they grade out pretty well here. The peripherals say the two sides should be pretty even. So despite the fact righties have had worse results so far this year, not a huge worry for me. And I would be okay with the Jays against Hauser in this spot. Let's go now to things to watch. Talk about one more pitcher. Alex Cobb is at home in a plus spot for tonight. I'm just worried about his pitch count because he made his return from the IL last week. Didn't make a rehab start, but threw 60 in that one. And that makes it his only start since May 29th. I'd project Cobb around 80 pitches for tonight, and that can do some damage against the Tigers, but I need a bit more than that. I'll be glossing over Cobb in favor of others despite the matchup. If you gave me a full leash on Cobb, I'd probably be pretty tempted because his strikeout numbers are pretty good this year, but we're not getting that. So I'm okay being lower on him in this one. I think the Cardinals are a pretty solid stack, just not in my top three. They're facing Kyle Hendricks. His big issues have been with lefties this year, and Arenado, Goldschmidt, the key guys in the Cardinals are righties for the most part. So could be good for some one-offs here if you want to go with some of the actual guys who will bat left-handed for tonight. I think that they could definitely be in play. So Nolan Gorman, fresh off that double dong. Brendan Donovan, if you want to go there. Dylan Carlson. Tommy Edman, switch hitter, if you want to go for the steals too. I think all those guys work. And I wouldn't be opposed to a Cardinals full stack, including the righties, but we do see some pretty extreme platoon splits for Hendricks, and they favor lefties, and the Cardinals are righty heavy within the most impactful bats in their lineup. I do think the Twins are in play. They have the highest implied total on the slate, but this is kind of what I was talking about, where I'm a bit lower on some teams than what the bookmakers are saying. They're facing German Marquez, who's better than what his results say he is. He is still letting up a 44% hard hit rate, though, since he started to shift towards his sinker and away from his four-seam fastball. So I get why the total is so high in this game, and his results have been terrible. And I do like the Twins, but I just don't think I'll like them quite as much as the public for tonight. So I talk about the Jays being an ideal single entry stack. I think the Twins are one of my least favorite ones for single entry. I would rather go with the Jays. I think the Cardinals work for there. Checking out the other teams mentioned too, with the White Sox and the Angels. Twins for multi-entry, sure, but not really for single entry for me because I think they might be a bit more popular than they deserve to be. Let's go with some dinger calls for tonight. The boring one, I'm going to go Taylor Ward facing off with Chris Flexen again, letting up a lot of fly balls to righties, a lot of hard contact. I could have gone Mike Trout, but I'm pretty sure I made Mike Trout a dinger pick earlier on this week. So we'll go Taylor Ward and hope the Angels continue to be good to us in this slot. Righty on righty matchup there for Ward. The fun one, I'll go Jake Burger. Jake Burger has been hitting the ball harder recently. He's been getting more extra base hits against righties, even against righties, whether you're righties or lefties, hitting roughly 5th or 6th in the order. Could move up if Jimenez does, or if Robert doesn't play. I would prefer he does play. Rather have Burger hit 6 with Robert in there than without him, but I still think that he's a good home run pick for today. Decent batted ball numbers, even against righties. Facing a bullpen for the Orioles that will let up some hard contact. So home run picks for this Friday, Taylor Ward and Jake Burger. That is all that we have here for today on the Solo Shot. That's all we have here for this week as we close things out. But as always, back once again next week, and more good stuff coming up for you later on today here on the DFS feed, the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, UFC via Austin Swaim. I've got NASCAR later on. Hit subscribe, get those podcasts right as they go up. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. If you've got any questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineups. Have a fantastic weekend. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.